The 3 billion bird study is named after the number of birds we've lost in North America since 1970. On this episode of EcoSense, why bird populations are in decline and how can we change it? A recent study revealed that we have about 3 billion less birds than we did 50 years ago. The question is, what's happening to these birds and what can we do about it?
Life for a bird is hard. There are a lot of things out there that want to do you in, right? There are hawks, there are falcons, there are mammals that may want to eat you as well. When you think about migration, we think about birds that are traveling thousands and thousands of miles, and it's an incredible effort that these birds undertake. And we, as humans, sharing the same spaces with them, we don't make it any easier on them. We actually make it a lot tougher for these birds, and we do that in many different ways. We're building up these big, sprawling cities, and there are a lot of office buildings and a lot of lights that are on at nighttime, and nighttime just so happens to be when the bulk of these birds are migrating. So it can be very disorienting for a bird who's trying to navigate to fly through a city with a whole bunch of lights on. So light pollution is a really big thing. When they do land and search for food during the daytime, if they're in someone's backyard, they may have to contend with a cat. So I am one of the most vocal voices on the keep your cats indoors front. In my opinion, it is non-negotiable. Cats are better off indoors. They are safer there, and there are a lot of different ways that we can keep them entertained and healthy indoors. You have window collisions, you have habitat loss, you have so many things that these birds are contending with. I've only been birding for 7 years. There are some who've been birding for 30 or 40 years, and they tell me there's a lot less birds these days than there used to be. We need these birds. We need these birds to continue to control insects, to continue to control rodents, to continue to pollinate and spread seeds around, and to continue to make us happy when they, grace us with their presence for a second or two. So no matter where you are, you're not disconnected. There are birds nearby.
Huge areas of the South Carolina coast are protected, and many of these ecosystems were saved by ducks.
Duck hunting has its deep roots in family tradition.
When I was probably 5 years old, my family had some property outside of Charleston, and I grew up in an army green sleeping bag in the bottom of a duck blind with my dad and my grandfather. I'm a second-generation conservationist, and I always knew that I wanted to work in conservation and protect land. I work with public and private partners to pull together funds to restore wetlands. And the sole purpose of that not only is to benefit waterfowl species, to benefit all migratory bird species.
The biggest threat that ducks are facing right now, of course, is habitat loss. So we're also seeing that as the sea level rises, and that's taking away marsh that those birds have been coming to for dozens of years, and that marshland's gone. They're going to back up and go to other areas.
We're standing at the main house site at Kinlaw Plantation, which is comprised of 13 original plantations from the colonial period. And the property, its purpose at this point is to manage wildlife responsibly and productively, but that's not always the way it was. The land was granted by the king to Thomas Lynch I in 1718, and the value of the property was its potential for agriculture. And the property consisted of great cypress swamps, virgin cypress that had never been cut. And you're talking about cypress trees that were 8 or 10 feet in diameter. The land was a place where you could grow rice, And so what he proceeded to do was to take down all the cypress timber and mill it into lumber.
Enslaved people toiled in intense heat, shoveling out canals by hand. The watery rice fields became breeding grounds for mosquitoes, creating human misery but thriving conditions for growing rice.
They grew rice successfully for a period of time. Throughout generations, as it proceeded from the colonial period to the antebellum period, the rice survived up until the war between the states, at which time northern businessmen who were wealthy saw that this property had a lot of waterfowl on it, and they wanted to duck hunt, so it was turned into a duck hunting club. So what we do here today is we take land that was changed during the colonial period, and we try to preserve it at the state after the change was occurred, which lends itself to habitat for not only ducks and geese and other waterfowl, but for wading birds and other kinds of fowl. So our job here is primarily take care of birds.
So what we have here is called a rice trunk. It's technology from hundreds of years ago. It's been used since the entire rice culture in America was started to control water. It's a device that allows us to let water into the field from the creek and keep it there, or let water out of the field back into the creek and not allow it to get back in.
Standing right here, we are connected to approximately 2 million acres of protected and conserved lands in the state of South Carolina. And Santee Coastal Reserve, with 12,000 acres of that, is a piece of that puzzle. You wouldn't know it, but all of these water control structures and systems of canals and dikes function to serve a purpose for managing wildlife, and it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of money. This project is a model for other conservation efforts across the U.S. I don't know of any others that function like it, and I am in the joint venture conservation world.
And it's not just ducks. It's a little bit of everything, it seems.
And this particular place was given to the Nature Conservancy, who then turned it over to the DNR. Waterfowl harvest is what pays for this all, so it's huge to make sure that we really provide prime hunting too. For ducks, what we try to provide is space, which we have, and water. You can see all around me, we got that too. And cover, we're good with that too, but you need food. So the food that we're mainly trying to grow right here is a submerged aquatic plant called widgeon grass. Widgeon grass has the advantage that it doesn't need to be planted, it's already in the system. It doesn't need to be fertilized, all we have to do is manage the water just right to encourage the maximum growth of widgeon grass.
This is what we're talking about. This is delicious. Not only is it the vegetative parts of this plant that the ducks will eat, but also the associated invertebrates. They love this. This is prime invertebrate habitat. And so this is loaded. And that's why you tend to see all the ducks. And once the water is low enough, also shorebirds in the area, because this is prime food.
We know what water levels these species need. The ducks swim, so they need a little bit deeper water. And then the shorebirds are often pretty small, short legs, so they need really shallow water. And they mostly just poke their bill into the mud and eat invertebrates. And then the wading birds are kind of the taller birds, egrets, herons, and they're primarily gonna just walk and feed on the fish, so they need maybe 5-6 inches of water.
The Santee Coastal Reserve is really important for waterfowl, as over 40% of the state's waterfowl utilize this area. It also lies within a shorebird reserve network site of international importance. Over 100,000 shorebirds migrate through this area every single year, and so it's providing really critical stopover habitat for them on their migrations to fuel up and keep going.
The Atlantic Flyway is a corridor that the birds on the east coast of North America use. So millions of birds every season, every spring head north to nest, and then when the weather cools, they head south. It's a really important flyway because it's a lot of diverse, rich lands, forests, grasslands, coastal marshes, Atlantic coast.
Right now, we have water that is so high. There's minor nuisances like you have to put on your rubber boots or even your waders to get to the boat. But there's also major issues where the water just rushes over the dikes.
So we have plenty of alligators on this project, and they just like to move around freely. Some more, some less. GPS studies have shown that they can be very mobile. So depending on where the food is available, they will move all over the place. And if they want to go from this side of the impoundment to that side of the impoundment, they will have to cross those dikes. And as they cross the dikes, they start to create little paths there, like any kind of wildlife will do. Their tail dragging, their feet leaving little marks, and after a while, it just becomes a bit of a wildlife highway, and that leads to a low spot in the dike. And that's exactly when water comes, that's where it will run through, and it will start to eat out the dike more and more. After a while of enough water running across it, it just turns into a bit of a disaster. And you can't really just come and take an excavator and patch that spot right there, because what happens then is that the water will run to the left and to the right of that spot. So then you need to really retop a large stretch of dike, because there is nothing more important in a project like this than having functioning tall dikes.
That's a real big problem for us because we have about 50 miles of dike here and about 60 water control structures.
Nature itself is always going to attempt to revert back to that which was original before man had any influence on it. And it tries to do that all the time. We get big tides, we get hurricanes, we get rain events.
The effects of sea level rise can be mitigated in certain situations. Many of the places the sea level rise is occurring so fast that the marsh doesn't have time to migrate inland and provide that habitat. So we're identifying areas where marsh can be saved and marsh can migrate, and focusing on those areas where we can conserve and hopefully have habitat for those species in the future. These lands are conserved in perpetuity, yet they have to be maintained and managed very intensively. And birds are simply a part of that picture. It's really managing an entire wetland ecosystem, and that provides the benefits for a lot of different kinds of wildlife, including mammals, insects, pollinators, and those kinds of things.
Usually I get to see deer, deer just running on the dikes, and you see a lot of bobcats. You see this whole cycle of, from really small invertebrates to blue crabs to eagles, swooping in and taking all that. It's just the variety of wildlife out here is really amazing. And very often you might adjust a water control structure. You almost step over an alligator to get to it. On the outside, there's dolphins swimming. On the inside, there's a pelican floating by. It's pretty amazing.
Birds of the Great Plains are some of the most threatened in the country. Shrinking grasslands and climate change are some of the challenges they face.
There's still some mystery around why some birds are declining more than others. We're just getting technology small enough that we can put on these species to track them where they go. I think we often think about we have to know everything about everything with our technology, and yet there's still a lot of unknowns in the natural world. Grassland birds as a habitat-based group have had the highest level of population losses, so over 50% of their populations amongst species of grassland birds have been lost since the 1970s. In the northern Great Plains here, we still have 2/3 of our grasslands still intact, but you still have fragmentation, which degrades the habitat quality for the grassland birds. Habitat loss really stands out as probably the primary threat, just because the sheer amount of habitat conversion. We don't see many of these specialized grasslands bird species using the row crops as habitat. They certainly can't nest in there. It's a totally different habitat structure.
This field is Eurasian crested wheat. So it's an introduced plant that was brought in the 1930s to stabilize soil. So birds will be attracted to nest in fields like this, and then when it dries, there's a lesser insect abundance, and so there's less food to feed their young. That looks like a really great place to raise the kids, and then all of a sudden they find out it wasn't.
Some of the species most imperiled are like that thick-billed longspur, the chestnut-colored longspur, the Sprague's pipit. We see tipping points in those population sizes. It's especially perilous because if there's 1 or 2 seasons of drought, that's going to really impact reproduction. That could really shrink those population numbers quite quickly. And that's basically what's happening with climate change. Those long-time stable cues are not as accurate. If you're trying to think like a bird, trying to plan a trip to get somewhere, you want to get there when the conditions are right for you to get there, not to show up and have snow or really harsh conditions. Most of the birds, 80% or so of the species, are migrating here to breed and then leaving when the winter conditions come. So kind of like human snowbirds, they haven't figured out to be here when the conditions are good and then go back south where they can have an easier winter. There's also tundra species that are breeding up on the Arctic tundra. So these are species like snowy owls, rough-legged hawks, Lapland longspurs, and northern shrikes. And then they come down here and winter in easier conditions than it would be up in the Arctic up there. Kids are taught about the rainforest, even though they might be living in the Great Plains, and they don't know about this wildlife issue in their own backyards. I think the more awareness we can bring to the plight of the grassland birds, the more interest we can get in conserving grasslands and restoring grasslands to help these populations rebound.
If you think bird watching is boring, then you haven't spent time birding with Jason Ward.
Wow, that is a big flock. So the birds, what they're doing is they're flying closer to the trees. They believe that that will save them. Cooper's hawks are built for that kind of pursuit, though. It's kind of like watching a high-speed chase unfold. As far as my love affair, my obsession with the natural world, it started when I was little. I was about 5 or 6 years old, and I wanted to learn anything that I could about dinosaurs. I thought I was 65 million years too late. I thought I couldn't go out and study dinosaurs. Well, turns out we can. Birds have been around for over 100 million years, and they are modern-day dinosaurs. And I really fell in love with birds specifically around like my sophomore year of high school. And I noticed some feathers that are floating by my window. So I run to the window to see what's going on. Sure enough, there's a peregrine falcon eating a pigeon about 30 feet from me. And I was just blown away by that because it taught me that I didn't have to travel to exotic places far away to be able to enjoy nature. And it also taught me that birds have this uncanny ability to make me smile during hard times. It's because the window that I was observing this peregrine falcon encounter through was the window of a homeless shelter that my family and I had lived in for several years at the time. I got an opportunity to live out a dream of mine.
I just don't understand how everyone can't love that.
which is to be able to host my own show about birds. I'm Jason Ward. This is Birds of North America. Do you have a favorite bird?
Well, I think I'm the opposite of you, Jason, because I know your favorite bird is a killing machine named the peregrine falcon.
It is. Yes, indeed.
And it doesn't just kill mammals, it likes to kill birds.
Yes.
So it's kind of a weird choice, if I may say so.
No matter where you are, no matter what kind of environment you live in, birds are there. Birds are near it. Anyone can get into birding, and with the advances in the internet and social media these days, it's much more accessible. First things first, there are a lot of rules and gatekeepers out there who say, well, if you want a bird the right way, you need to do these list of things. Throw that all in the trash. In order to be a good birder, you need to have eyes, ears, and curiosity. And if you're doing it and you wind up smiling while you're doing it the right way. That's all it takes. Often when we see birds, they seem very happy, very joyful, and, they're feeding on seeds or berries. And if you really pay attention and you look closely, the birds will feed for a second and then look around. It's every waking moment, they're making sure that nothing is getting the drop on them because everything wants to eat them. So life is very stressful the lower you are on the food chain. And a lot of folks think of blue jays or grackles as bullies. And I take that and flip it on its head. And I say, what about the beautiful, shy, timid eastern bluebird? And everyone's like, oh, it's such a joy. Love the bird. Well, did you know that they go and they have pretty intense wars with tree swallows, sometimes evicting them out of the nest and seriously injuring and harming them as well? I think we should just all view them as tiny miniature dinosaurs. And that's the fairest thing that we can do to them, because that allows them to just be themselves and to interact with the world. You can bird anywhere you want. Now, if you want to find what we call hotspots, that takes a little bit more work, a little bit more research. What you can do is visit eBird. It's this website, ebird.org. You go there, make an account, it's free, and you can search your local hotspots. You can also search hotspots from anywhere across the world. That is why that bird is called a catbird. They have this cat-like meow sound, and now it's singing. So you get a mixture of different notes. It's beautiful to hear bird song, but if you think about why those birds are singing, things get a little darker. The birds are singing for one of two reasons. Either it is a direct advertisement to the other males in the area, letting them know, hey, listen to this song. I'm big and strong. If you come here, I will fight you. Or, ladies, listen to this song. This song and this clarity and the pitch and the tone means I'm big and strong. Please mate with me. Please, please, please. I'm begging you, please mate with me. So, the reasons are a little life and death, literally. Crows and ravens. Usually with birds, it's business. I'm flying because I need to get somewhere to defend my territory or eat. With crows, you kind of see them doing the same thing, but on the way there, they're like tumbling in the air and diving at one another and doing somersaults in the air. It seems like it's really fun to be a crow. We've observed ravens sliding down off of the roofs of snow-covered homes. The only reason for that is play. So we don't see play in most birds, but we see it in crows and ravens because they have this heightened brain capacity there. So there's that need to want to explore things and test their environment. I think that there's a lot of things that we can do as individuals to help them on the way. You can put feeders up, and that will bring the birds in for sure. What you can also do, and what's probably a little bit better, is you can plant native plants. You can have water features. You can have native shrubs in your yard that birds love to hide in as well. So if you build some kind of a miniature ecosystem, miniature habitat for these birds, they will come, they will enjoy your space, and you will be rewarded for that. I have a 4-year-old son who loves to explore and go on adventures with me, right? And it would break my heart if he's not able to see peregrine falcons, decades down the line. This is my favorite bird, a bird that makes me incredibly happy each and every single time I see them. And I want future generations of conservationists to be able to be inspired and to have those feelings inside of them when they see their favorite animals down the line. But we have some work to do in order to make sure that we're able to get there and that we're able to conserve these habitats. And, it boils down to more people caring about the world around them. That's all it takes.